You're listening to the Endo Files, the Endodontic Experts podcast, a show from US Endo Partners. You're about to hear a dynamic conversation highlighting personal perspectives on the specialty and so much more. Let's dive in.
Hello, everybody. These water bottles don't stay up very well, so I'm not sure what's going to happen there. I would like to welcome everybody to the Endo Files. Today I'm with Bryan Garcia, who is our North Region's Operations Director at US Endo Partners, correct?
Correct.
All right.
Yes.
Got the first question right. We're doing good. Before you came to US Endo Partners, you were with Amazon, and you were in operations there.
Yes.
What does operations mean to all of us that are listening to this today? What do you guys actually do?
I mean, operations is kind of it's the catch-all. It can be anything, it can be a conversation about accounting to HR, and everything in between. So,
and the point of what you are doing is to really help find trends through information that is going to help probably better efficiencies, increase production, you're just looking for any way, any trend, any that's out there anywhere.
Yeah, really any way to support the practice.
To support the practices.
Mm-hmm.
So I can only imagine that coming from Amazon and operations, that seems like such a big, overwhelming process, and they're very streamlined. So I'm sure that there's a lot of information, experience, intelligence that you brought from that job that you can bring here. Anything that comes to mind?
I mean, Amazon actually wasn't that streamlined, kind of behind the
curtain. Before he got there.
Yeah, no, behind the curtain at Amazon, they do a very good job of marketing outwardly, right? Like all
Right.
their tools are great, everything works. And then you get on the inside and none of their tools work. Everything's a nightmare.
Oh.
Yeah.
So we're doing okay,
Yeah.
is what you're
Yeah.
saying.
No, we're doing great.
There's hope, everybody. That's good. I wanted to just run through that really quickly because it's important. It's your current role. It's why you're here today. We are doing this. It's a little different today, what we're doing. Normally, we do a podcast. We have headphones on, and we are on computers, and it's a very intimate, private affair that's not very stressful. But today we're doing it in front of a live audience.
Mm-hmm.
Please don't throw things at us. This is going to be good, but we're going to get warmed up here, and we usually have time to do this. The reason we're here today is not because of the boring ops job. It's because you're a Navy SEAL. You're a retired Navy SEAL, and that's really cool. I will say, Bryan is not very happy with me about forcing him to be up here today, and I did question, could he kill me after this if this does not go well? And if I do go missing, that's where you guys need to start looking first. So, because he could kill me with his pinkies, and probably who knows what else he could do to me. So, I mean, it's just, you hear Navy SEAL, and that's just a really cool thing, right? But you are retired, and I'm looking at you, and I feel like you're probably younger than me. So what does being retired as a SEAL mean?
So for me, I came in at 18. So I came right out of high school, right into the Navy, did, the pipeline at the time, which was went to boot camp. Then I went to my A school, which was all that is MOS or the job in the Navy. Because when I came in, a SEAL wasn't technically a job in the Navy. So the Navy had to train you in something else. So I went to Sonar Tech A school in San Diego, and then went from that straight into BUDS or SEAL training.
So BUDS is, explain that. There's a long process through this.
Yeah, so it's basic underwater demolition and SEAL training. It's a 6-month program. There's like another additional kind of bonus month on the front that doesn't count for anything, but you just get to spend an extra month there.
They just make you do it anyway?
Yeah. So all in all, it's about 7 months. The attrition rate's about 70 to 80%. And when you come out, you don't really learn anything at BUDS either. It's just kind of,
It's just torture?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. So, you don't really learn anything until you get out of the back end, and then you go into another program for another 6 to 9 months. And that's where you actually start to learn, basic soldiering and how to become a SEAL and all those types of things.
So when you say BUDS is worthless, I know you're joking. Is that just the physical part of that? Is that the thing that we all see in the movies where people are laying in the water with the logs drowning themselves?
Yes. So all that is BUDS. And it's funny, like it looks, and everybody kind of looks at the physical aspect of it, but really it's the mental aspect of it. And even when you're at BUDS, there's a saying, like it's 90% mental, 10% physical. And a lot of people are, kind of balk at that, but it is really, it's in the program. I mean, it's just a constant demand on you. They're constantly asking you to do things, and just seeing how you respond. So they're just constantly putting major obstacles in front of you and seeing how you respond. Do you keep going? Do you keep pushing through? Because kind of like Derek brought up yesterday, the beliefs. Like everyone, has a belief of, hey, I'm capable of doing this, right? Or I'm, this is the higher end of my capability. And Buds is all about just pushing right through that,
Yeah, when we were doing our pre-interview for this, you actually said to me, and I want to make sure I get it right because I wrote it down, and I don't know if this is a quote, but you said that the SEALs people, the training people, everything that they ask you to do, they 100% know it's impossible. They're like, you're never going to do this, but you do it anyway.
Yeah, and there's no right answer either. Like everything you do is wrong, for 6 months. Like there is no like, hey, you guys did really great today. Like that was a great job. Expressing gratitude, there's not a lot of...
there's that is not their core value.
Yeah, no, it's not one of the core values.
No core value of expressing gratitude.
So, like I told somebody, I was like, that's the one I struggle with the most because I don't think I gave a compliment for 20 years. You know what I mean? Like it's just not something you
should
really
practice. Compliment me right now. No, do it.
See, now you're making me really uncomfortable.
Noted. I've made a SEAL uncomfortable. I feel like I just accomplished something. So that's good. So so they're not looking, because in my mind, which is what I've seen on movies, and we'll talk about that in a minute, because I think there's a if I asked everybody in this room, like when you think of a SEAL, what's the word that comes up? Psycho? Did somebody say psycho? What did you say? Oh, Jocko. So a person, but like physical qualities, like you're people who are untouchable, right? And you're people who don't, I don't know, you're like metal machine, you're machines, you're robotic, you guys, you're stealth, you're all these things. And the fact of the matter is there is a struggle that you guys go through during this process. And I mean, like you said, there's an attrition rate of 70-80%. People want to give up all the time. So there's a mental toughness that has to be there and a desire to never give up. Mm-hmm. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, no, that's accurate. Yeah.
So why, if you know that you're never going to accomplish what they're asking you to do, why are you doing this? Like, what keeps you going?
Well, I mean, really, it's that, and that's what they're looking for. They're looking for that person that's just going to keep going no matter what the odds. Hey, you failed. Well, how do you respond to that? Because there are people, and a lot of the folks that don't make it through, they'll hit that wall, they'll fail, they'll quit, and I'm done, and they just walk away. Right? They get to a point, whether that's cold, wet, tired, one of those things, and and they kind of hit that wall, and they're done, and they leave. But like I said, they're just constantly looking to see, hey, how much farther are you willing to push yourself? How much farther can you go?
So when I think of SEALs and when I hear all the stories that we'll get into in a little bit, the first thing that comes to mind is being a SEAL is the constant pursuit of excellence. Everything you're doing, you are practicing, you are refining, you are examining, you are assessing, you are analyzing every nuance of everything you do to try to make it perfect and hit perfection. Give me a little bit of what that looks like.
So like, I mean, a good example of that is, and just for a little bit of context and background, like, so every SEAL comes in, they all go to Buds, everyone goes through the same program, and then you either go kind of East or West Coast, because those are really only a couple places you can go. And everyone goes to their first team for a few years, and then Naval Special Warfare Development Group that's kind of the pinnacle for the SEAL teams. And everyone has to do at least 5 to 7 years before you can try to screen and go over to that program as well. It's another, and it kind of varies, but 6 to 9 month selection and training process. And that one has about a 50% attrition rate. And that's of people who have been SEALs for 5 to 7 years. But in that program, when you go over there, it's still very physical, but it's definitely a lot more mental, So like the way that program works is you show up, and the kind of their grading criteria that they look at is, kind of the bread and butter of the SEAL teams, that direct action, sort of compound clearance, room clearance, those types of things, that hostage rescue sort of tactics. And they break it down to the absolute basics, right? Like they give you a very quick class. You walk in, hey, number one man, you're going to do this. Number two man, you're going to do this. Got it? Okay, ready, let's go. And you go in and you're all waiting in this little waiting area. And then they have this tiny little room, and they come out, one instructor calls, you and a buddy in, we call it the panic room, because you get in there and you're just standing there by yourself and you have no idea what's going on. And then you walk out into the other room, and then you have to start following those procedures that they had given you. And when you walk into that room, it's kind of like a big open high bay, and they have a room built on there. And then they have catwalks and sort of walkways up above it. So when you walk in there, there's like 30 people up in the catwalks, a couple people on the ground. No one's very warm and inviting,
So you have hecklers up above.
Yeah,
that are
you have
there
hecklers.
For the specific purpose of making you feel terrible about yourself.
Yep.
And making the situation more nerve-wracking.
Yep.
Or
and
intense.
The actual process you're doing too, the procedure, it couldn't be any more simple. It's just square room, center fed door, pistol, no live ammo. You know what I mean? But you're still sitting there, you're kind of like but you go in, you do your procedures, and then as soon as you're kind of done and everything's done, they safe and holster your weapons. You holster your weapons, and then they just immediately start tearing into you with every single thing you did wrong. I still remember, that's like one of the very vivid memories of my career, was that first run when I walked in that room. I don't remember who my buddy was. Like everything was just in my little bubble,
Right.
But I remember I was standing there and they safe and hang and everything. And, a guy above was like, "Hey, dickhead." And I was like, "Oh, well, he's talking to me, I guess." So, I look up.
Note, Brian responds to dickhead. That's good for all of us to know.
So he's like, "Take a step to your left." So, I take a tiny little step to my left. He's like, "Too far back to the right." So, smaller little step back to the right. He's like, "That's where you should have been, under penetration, performance check." And that's, boom, hits me on the performance there. And then they just, what I found out later is every single guy on the catwalk is given a specific thing. Like, hey, you watch his trigger finger, you're watching his footwork, you're watching this, you're watching that. And they are just nitpicking every little thing. So the guy that was watching my penetration, that's all he did. He watched how far I came in the room, my footwork coming in the room, and that was it. He didn't pay attention to anything else. And then you kind of build on that, But in that program, they're kind of manufacturing that stress, right? They're tearing it down. And what they're looking for is, on the next run, did I underpenetrate or did I overpenetrate? If I overpenetrated, then at least I'm thinking about what I did wrong on the last run, and trying to improve that process. And then kind of once you get up into that command, it's just, you focus on that stuff all the time. You're doing the house runs all the time, and you're constantly trying to improve. And that's where I go back to like the never given a compliment. For efficiency's sake, a lot of times you would go to a run with the team, you'd set it up, do the training, and then you would only focus really on the negative things. Like, hey, what do we need to improve? Meanwhile, somebody else is resetting the house, resetting the training. You're giving the team like, hey, this is what you guys need to improve here, here, and here. Okay, ready, go. Let's do it again.
It's fascinating to me. So one, you always learn you learn from failures. They're not going to talk to you about what you're doing well. No need to even focus on that. But it's the constant pursuit of excellence. It's the always pushing yourself to improve and never giving up. But one of the things that you've also in that story that I find very interesting, and it's something that relates to me that I've heard for years in the endodontic community, is it's quantity versus quality, I would say. When I listen to you, though, because this is this procedure, which I think it's interesting since we're correlating things to endodontics, that you got everything you guys did, you called a procedure. In my mind, they're missions or ops, but we'll call them procedure if you want to call it that. Your procedures that you go in and do, you do them over and over and over again. So you're doing the quantity, and it's the quantity that leads to quality. You guys have a message or a saying is slow is smooth, smooth is fast. So the more you do something, the better the quality gets, and the faster you can go. And it's not because you said when we were doing this in the pre-interview, you said you would go in and be with people who were in this flow, if you will, and they would be walking, but the pace and everything, like some of the times when you do time runs, that would be in those moments when the slow is smooth, smooth is fast. Instead of rushing through, you would have your best timed like outcomes, right? Like you would be the fastest. So how many times did you guys go through this process and analyzing and having people critique and rely on people to come in within your community to help you get to slow is smooth, smooth is fast?
It was constant. You know, I mean, it was every single day, doing this every single day for years. With the same group of people too, the same team, kind of just every day for years, working and working and working. And a lot of times what you found is, if people tried to rush through, you know, or like they would get that, you know, feel the pressure of like, I need to go faster. That's usually when things would start to fall apart, you know, but when they were just kind of mastering those basics, moving nice and smooth, that's when it, you know, it worked. You know, we used to describe it like, because, you know, once again, like the building clearance was kind of a lot of stuff we did. Like it would be like water flowing to the building. Like it should be just that smooth where it's just, you're going, filling all the gaps, doing everything you need to do. And I know yesterday, I think somebody made the comment of even, you know, in the endo world of assisting, you know, like, hey, like, don't talk to me. I know what you need. You know, I'm going to hand you that. Where in our community too, a lot of times when people started talking, it would slow everything down and mess it up. Everyone kind of, you worked at it so much, you mastered it. Everyone knew what their job was. And without speaking, just with that body language, I could tell, you know, hey, this guy is going to do this. That means I'm going to do this. I'm literally just reading off their body language and flowing into the next thing.
I mean, I love that because when you talk about that, there's some things that need to happen there in order to get that, right? Mm-hmm. One, knowing each other really well helps that communication, obviously. And you said there's 2 places to go. There's 2 places you can be if you're a SEAL. And we haven't even gotten to the fact, by the way, and I'm going to get to this, but not only was he a Navy SEAL, but you're a SEAL Team 6, you were a former SEAL Team 6 member, which is the quintessential highest level of a SEAL person you can be. So we really are he could probably kill all of you in this room at one time. So you should feel uneasy for a little bit, especially if he's your ops director. Don't mess up. Listen to him. So, but that being said, you guys live in this community. So you eat, drink, sleep. Your families know each other. You guys are you are a community. You support each other through everything, correct? And then you learn. But in this community, and when you go into the SEAL Team 6, for instance, how many years of experience do you have to be a SEAL Team 6?
The average is about like 5 to 8 years that someone was in another SEAL team prior to going over.
And then when you're in, it's consistency of the team. Like there's very little turnover. Yeah, very little turnover. Right?
Kind of, I mean, you get the guys that kind of promote out, but other than that, that core group kind of stays together. So like I spent 10 years in the same squadron. And so with the same group of guys,
So 10 years of a brotherhood, basically, and living and, you know, sharing all these experiences, births, marriages, friendships, plus all the trauma, all the loss, all the grief, everything. So it's a pretty close bond that you guys have. In addition to that, there is very well defined roles, very well and empowerment. So talk a little bit about when we were discussing this earlier, if, you know, what happens if you go into a room and nobody knows their job, nobody's empowered to make decisions. What happens? What does that look like? So kind of compare, contrast for us.
Well, I mean, and that's one thing that we work for, you know, and it's huge in the military. I've had this conversation with Ronnie too, the succession planning, you know, as soon as you take a role, you're not even really working in that role. You're immediately training the person underneath you to take that role. You know, so kind of as I worked my way up, kind of my last operational role was called a team leader. I ran a team. And as a team leader, you have a lot of autonomy. You have a lot of, you know, a lot of influence, especially for, you know, I was enlisted in the military. It's probably the spot in the military where an enlisted person has, you know, the most autonomy, most control. I mean, you could literally be put in charge of, you know, a country team in a country where you're interacting with ambassadors and everything, you know, National Security Council directly. And so, there's a lot of responsibility with a lot of these positions. And in that, just the nature of the work too, like somebody could get injured or something could happen to them and that next person has to fill them immediately. Right. So there was a lot of, like you said, that community living together. So the trust was already kind of established, right? You build that trust, you work together, and then you empower the people underneath you. But when I was in that team leader role, when I actually took the team leader role, my 2IC, basically, he was the guy really running the team, like at that point. As soon as I took it, I was basically looping him in. We were going to all the meetings together. We're doing all that stuff. We're having the conferences. Hey, what do we want to do on this? How do we want to approach this? So that way, if something did happen to me, like they was seamless, And I mean, with that too, though, he was kind of like just slowly pushing me out the door. I'm like, hey man, I still work.
I'm still here.
I'm still here. Like I still work here.
I matter. Yeah, I know that feeling. Yeah. But it's also great to know that you have great people underneath you that can contribute at a high level, and that things will, in your absence, things are smooth.
Yeah, I mean, there's a little bit, in any situation, giving up some of that control to somebody else because they're going to do it a different way than you. And a lot of times, what I found in the SEAL teams was it was better than what I would have done.
So you could learn from your predecessor.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, but it is. I mean, you do. So there's a little bit of ego there. Like you're the established person. You know what you're doing, giving control, letting people do things their own way. Even you struggled with that a little bit.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, it's you constantly want to be like, well, it's not the way I would do it. And then you see the outcome and you're like, well, I'm glad I didn't do it my way. That's better.
Yeah. So. Yeah. I am. So one of the things too that we were talking about when you were talking about this, the community and working with these people and the flow of everything, is the best way I can describe it in my mind is it's like a choreographed dance. Like you were saying, you could go in on missions, and as you were walking in, if this team member on the side of you moved a certain way, no communication had to be made. You knew immediately that you were to shift. And same with everybody else. So this person did this, you automatically reacted. And so that there was just this correlation and this constant motion of keeping the integrity of the team to accomplish your mission together. I look back at that and think about practices, and then like what Derek White, who is writing a flow course for us, has written a flow course for us, but is out providing this to our practices. Flow, I think, if I'm not mistaken, he took the term from this. Derek, am I making that up? We should say that if that's not what you did, because that's a really cool thing. But anyway, it is. Okay, I thought that was mentioned somewhere along the way. But I look back at practices and how busy our endodontic practices are and the tight spaces they're working in and all these things. And if longevity of your team and your staff and the people that are in your office, and the more empowered and the more authority that they have, and the more they know exactly what their job is, and everybody is out to do the same thing, which is create the best experience for that patient, they can do that same dance. They can have that same flow where they're bypassing each other in the office and everybody's working and correlating and keeping the answering phones and keeping the flow of the practice moving. And that is really what leads to those efficiencies and the quantity and the repetitiveness to quality, never being misguided and never being sacrificed, correct? So quantity, you can have quantity and you can have quality if you have flow and if you have all those things and you focus on the pursuit of excellence constantly. Do you like how I wrapped all that up in one thing there? That was not even planned, but that came out. So another thing that I really loved that you talked about is you were telling me, so you have been deployed 12 times. Is that right? Did I remember that right from our notes? You have served almost all of your deployments were in the Middle East, Iraq, and Egypt, correct?
No, I actually never went to Iraq, but Afghanistan.
Sorry.
Afghanistan, Yemen, and Somalia.
Okay. And then you did one in South.
Well, yeah, we went down to, I've done some other, I don't really count them as deployments, but we when I was at development group, we were on alert or on call, and we would get called to other parts of the country or other parts of the world sometimes, short notice.
And we're gonna talk a little bit about that too, because he is married, and I'm not sure how, because I don't know if I could handle being a wife of a Navy SEAL for sure. So we're gonna come back to those immediate calls and be there tomorrow and what that would be like. But I want to go back into, like, you're doing all this training and you're doing all these deployments everywhere, and you are an expert. You're an expert. Bar none, nobody can do this better than SEAL Team 6. Nobody can do this better than you. However, you, the SEALs, go out and seek out experts that are outside of the whole SEAL community to teach you all things. We were talking about jump men. So you've jumped out of an airplane or a helicopter how many times?
I think I'm close to around 800 jumps.
Just 800. It probably doesn't even affect you. You probably don't get an adrenaline rush anymore, do you? It's like, yeah, I'm jumping out. I would die. Yeah. I'm never jumping out of anything that's high. Off the stage, I wouldn't even jump off the stage. So so you have jumped out of an airplane or a helicopter 800 times, but you are still hiring somebody to come in and teach you how to do this. Like, tell me a little bit about that experience.
And that's kind of that in the SEAL teams, that constant pursuit of excellence, right? We would constantly look for, hey, if we had a mission jumping, for example. I mean, it's a good example just because we did go external to the military. We're like, hey, we suck at this. You know what I mean? Like, we need to get better. So what we did is we went and found, the best people in the world, professional skydivers, and contracted with them. Now, bringing them in initially there was definitely some resistance from the higher levels in the military. They're like, well, why do we?
You said they were big pot smoker hippies, right? Like, I could see.
There's a lot of dreadlocks, great people. But I mean, they came in and they just, basically we would break it down. You'd have, kind of one professional skydiver, best skydivers in the world, Red Bull Air Force guys, Arizona Arsenal, PD Factory Team, all these different groups that, they're competing in the world championships in Dubai every year. And these are the people winning the gold medals, right? And, paid them to come and teach us how to jump, and I mean, it was amazing. Like, the return on that was almost instantaneous. Like, after the first trip we had with them, I mean, just everyone's capability went up exponentially, you know what I mean? And just continued to improve the more and more we worked with them, right? But there were a few guys every now and again that would kind of, the ego would get in the way, like, well, what do we need? What can we learn from these people? But it wasn't just jumping, if it was shooting, we'd bring people in. Hey, this guy's the best shot in the world. Let's bring him in, Hey, this person, is great at what, it didn't matter what it was. Hey, this person's great at this person's great at that. Let's bring them in. Any experts we could bring in anything that we thought we could help improve what we were doing. We were open to that. We were trying to bring them in. So
it's amazing to me that people that I would think knew everything about everything still rely on others to help them achieve greatness. So, and and again, we were talking about the ego earlier. You do have to kind of put your ego aside and go, maybe I have something to learn from this person who is unassuming and has dreadlocks and, is still a really great person and can contribute to my success. So I thought that was very interesting, and it shocked me. Like, I was just like, I would think that you are the greatest in the world at everything. So I just thought that was, when we talk about learning with humility, and one of our core values at US Endo Partners is learning with humility. If you can do it, I can also do it. So I just thought that was really an important thing to do. We are running out of time. The thing is blinking at me and telling me we're done, but I want to do one last conversation because you are a SEAL. So what is maybe one of the situations? I think when we were talking, we want to hear some of the combat, but you were talking about some hostage situations that you were in. Tell me a little bit about those.
So that's kind of why the SEAL Team 6 was created was counterterrorism, hostage rescue. Delta Force is the same thing. So it's sort of the reason the command exists. and it's one of the higher risk things you could do, because it's one of those where you're putting yourself at risk for somebody else, right? And during my career, I went on a few. We had some successful ones, and we had there was one specific unsuccessful, where we failed, and even on the same deployment, we had two very close. Like I said, once again, one successful, and these were in areas that the U.S. we didn't own the territory at all. Like, we were going into essentially an enemy controlled territory with a very, very small force to try to rescue some hostages. Like I said, on one account, we were successful. And when I say that we were successful, tactically successful, strategically, it was still a failure, because the one hostage we were actually really looking for, we knew there was a bunch of hostages, but there was one specific one we were looking for, wasn't there. So we rescued these other hostages, but we didn't get the one that we were really there for. And then, it was against Al Qaeda. They had a big cell, and they basically knew exactly who we were looking for. And then they came out and said, "Hey, we're going to execute this guy." They made the video, and they're like, "We're going to do the whole video thing." So they kind of set the conditions for the next one. And we weren't 100% sure where they were. We had best guess, took a swing, went, and unfortunately we were unsuccessful. Which, I mean, it's a challenging thing, right? Like, we failed at our mission. We failed that mission, and it was the whole reason why we exist. Like, hey, our command exists to do this, and we failed at it. So that, it was a tough pill to swallow, you know what I mean? And then you come back, and then obviously you get you got to go. And one thing that we were good at was sharing and debriefing, because that's where you learn. You learn from your failures. But when we came back from that, you almost had to go on that, that public tour around the command and other units and say, "Hey, look, here's what happened. We came in over here. Maybe we should have done this. Looking at it, maybe we should have done that. But this, these are the areas we could have improved upon. And everyone just kind of tore that thing apart. You know what I mean? From every aspect of it. But I mean, at the end of the day, I think the command was stronger after that. People learned a lot about that. We even shared it with some of our partners, from other nations, because they had some people in the area that they were looking at, like, "Hey, this is the resistance we met. This is what we saw."
And yeah. I think it's interesting. I mean, learning from your failures is always important. You're not telling the whole story. I'm going to push a little deeper. You actually got to the hostage, correct?
Yeah. I mean, so there was actually a couple hostages there. We did. When we got to them, they were still. I mean, the enemy guys had shot him before we got there into the building, and then they had kind of fled out. So we got there, they were still breathing, and our medics immediately went to work on them. And we had some amazing medics that were in the helicopters. We had to call in the helicopters. And I mean, they were doing surgery on them right in the helicopter.
They're doing surgery in the helicopter, taking fire, correct?
Yep, under fire.
So, I mean, the medical team was amazing.
Yep.
And they kept them alive till they. I mean,
they were. I mean, their injuries were just too severe. But
and I thought it was funny as you were telling me this story. I immediately wanted to help you reframe what you consider a failure, as it was not the outcome you desired, but I still think it was. It wasn't the outcome you wanted, but it was a better outcome than if you never tried at all. Mm-hmm. Because this person, while they were alive, were able to be with people that were on their side, that cared about them, that wanted them to live, and you got the body recovered, and they were able to go home to people that loved and cared about them, their families. And so while it wasn't the outcome, I think if you can reframe that, that's the part that keeps giving you the courage to keep moving on and knowing that you're doing good, even when tactically you're looking at yourself saying, "I failed." So I think it's I want to give that to you, like reframe that now that you're out, and I get it. You had to measure yourself that, but people had closure because of the very important you sacrificing and putting yourself out there and risking your life for this person. Some family gets to now grieve and have that closure, so it's appreciated. And I think that's important to say. So anyway, I appreciate you.
Thank you.
I'm going to give you some gratitude. There you go. So I kind of went heavy there for a minute, but I thought that was really important, and perspectives matter. And I think that's also something that a community can provide to you, is a different perspective on how to, like when you're in it and you're looking at it one way and you maybe don't see the positive. And this is something that endodontists deal with all the time. We've heard everybody talking about this. Endodontics is hard. Jason Putnam's message yesterday was, it was amazing. And when you're in it, it's hard to see the positive sometimes. But if we can all bring ourselves out of that and rely on people around us and be in this community that really cares and supports you and appreciates you, it can make a difference in how you live and breathe out there. So,
yeah. And I talked to Ronnie about that a little bit as well before this. Being in the military, it's kind of you carry that weight, and you don't realize you're carrying it until it's kind of removed or until it's pointed out to you. You know what I mean? And at least acknowledging that you're carrying something, then you can start to do something about it. Otherwise, it just slowly weighs on you over time, and just slowly just breaks you down. So
I can't even imagine. So I can't put myself there. I can say, as a mother of 4 sons, when I also did a podcast with Ronnie recently, and we were talking about that weight and the age at which you're carrying that weight. I can't imagine, but I can certainly say that it changed my perspective, because war for me has been what I've seen on TV, and hey, we have a lot. It's not World War I, World War II. It's not this thing that's we're out there and there's significant death tolls and populations of people being wiped out. We have drones, we have technology. It's a safe place to be. You guys, you can really make it less significant. But the fact of the matter is you guys you're in there, you're in it, you're personal hand-to-hand combat, you're losing people. And that is a big weight to carry. And so some of that trauma that you guys carry and the burden of that is great. And yet you have that community, you live together, you breathe, you eat, you sleep, you're together all the time, and you support each other. And that's where I was going to go back to your wife, because you talk about your wife in a very, he lights up when he talks about his wife, and I wish we had more time to do that, because she is a significant part of your life. But really, you guys didn't live together very much, because you were being deployed and called last minute, and she took a lot of the burden for you sometimes, because I like to think that SEALs don't die ever, because you're SEALs. But the fact of the matter is she was attending a lot of funerals, and you guys had to be that support team. And sometimes you had to split up where you went, because different things happened and there were too many funerals for you guys to attend. So you would divide and conquer. And so talk a little bit about that and what that means to you.
Yeah, no. So I met my wife in 2007 when I was going through selection and training. She's a 21-year-old college student, no idea anything about the military.
She sees a cute boy. She's like, whatever, this is awesome.
Well, the cute boy was my friend.
Oh, he was your friend?
Me. Yeah. So, I saw her across a crowded room. I thought she was looking at me. Unbeknownst to me.
Mistakes lead to opportunities. Yeah. That's awesome.
Actually, a West Point grad.
He's a West Point grad. There you go. Yep. Stupid West Point grads.
I know. But yeah, so, I think she's looking at me. I go up, talk to her friends, like, hey, that guy's coming to talk to you. She's like, what guy? But it worked out. But
clearly.
Yeah.
Clearly.
You
did okay. Did you do the look, lean, and listen? That's how my husband claims that he got every girl ever. He's like, you just give it time. You look, lean, and listen. It doesn't matter if you're cute or not. So.
But yeah, we did long distance for 4 years. And then we ended up getting married 2011. And in 2011, for sort of the SEAL community, it was we lost a helicopter that year. We lost some other guys on other various combat deployments. And that was like the year we got married and my wife moved out, so like she knew some of the families, but she wasn't super tied in. Like she was just getting into that community and that support network when we lost one of the helicopters. And 31 Americans, and now we're running, like a mass casualty kind of, memorials, funerals. I was running a funeral, so I was setting everything up, setting up the memorial, getting all of the logistics. But meanwhile, there's, concurrently, there's all these other memorials running. And my wife now had known some of these people, knew the widows now, and she's having to go to all these memorials by herself in a lot of cases, relatively new to the community. But I mean, she's great, and, I mean, she fell into that support network, you know what I mean? And it is, people are just now starting to kind of talk about that, but it's huge, absolutely huge, that wife network and how they all support each other and, the kids and, watching each other's kids. Hey, I need to go do this. I mean, it's huge. So.
Well, I want to thank you for being here and sharing your story with us. The things I'm going to recap real quick is just always pursue excellence. I think it's amazing to me, the alignment of what I think you all are trying to achieve as a SEAL team and what we're doing at US Endo Partners align a lot. Always pushing to improve, never giving up, pursue excellence, seek out experts, talk to people, learn from others. Community is critical. Community is critical. Huge. Support is critical. Having somebody that has your back is critical. Practice, because the practice and the efficiencies and doing the quantity and examining everything that you're doing is what's going to lead to quality, so you can have both at the same time, quantity and quality, which is not believed. That belief system that we talk about, most people don't believe that you could do both, and you can. So I believe in yourself, never give up, and thank you for sharing. I appreciate your time. And before we go, I do also want to there's a lot of military in our audience today. And again, I think it's important to remember that those that have served us have sacrificed a lot, and how greatly it's appreciated. And just know, I want to thank you for the reminder, and I want to thank everybody that's listening that's ever served. I appreciate you, and I know everybody else does too. We're grateful Americans, and that's why I have the T-shirt on today. So thank you very much, Bryan. You did great. You're not going to kill me.
Yeah.
I'm so happy.
Thanks.
You've been listening to the Endo Files, the Endodontic Experts podcast, a show from US Endo Partners. Keep connected with us by subscribing to the show in your favorite podcast player and following us on social. Thank you for listening. Until next time.